Hey guys, another box arrived today. Today we've got something a wee bit different. We've got some paints from Scale75, their new instant colour range. So let's crack it open and have a look. And it looks like there's some bubble wrap. Hopefully that's enough to keep everything alive. So as well as the instant colours, I bought a bunch of just the existing range. I've heard good things about it. So we got these. But yeah, I'm going to mostly have a look at the instant colours. This is just but yeah, so apart from those, the main thing we're going to have a look at is the instant colours. So it comes, well, the level I got comes in this wooden box. There's a wee bit of, that was probably a mistake. Although I'm sure during the transport they were upside down at some stage. But there was a lot of rolling around. So yeah, there's a little bit of plastic on here. Hopefully that's protected it. I've seen, is that cardboard? Cool. And a wee bit of cardboard there, so that's good. It's like, oh no, something's coming off. So yeah, we'll get rid of this bubble wrap. So yeah, it comes in this nice wooden box, instant. And as we open it, twist it, and it has a nice wee lock there. So this was partially probably from me tipping things upside down, but in here we've got a bunch of these nice colours. And then again we have some more plastic in here that'll have helped it with its moving, so nothing in there. It comes with a paintbrush. I think there was 2 paintbrushes, and then these everything in its spot, and then a second paintbrush. And then we've got a simple plastic palette, and then a bunch of these Kickstarter bonus items. Just a wee brush stand. It came with one of their sample metallic colours. There are a couple of wee bases to paint. Maybe a bottle opener, can't remember, but it's got instant on it. Bottle opener or a fridge magnet or something. Some coasters that got quite warped during the transit. And then a colour wheel, which is good because I don't know much about colour theory. So it'll be useful. But yeah, the main thing that we were getting here was this range of instant colours. So if we lift this up, we've got a 24 on that layer, and then another 24, so 48 colours. And then it's got this medium, and then I think 3 types of primers. So these primers are really designed for the instant colours. For those that don't know what instant colours are, they were sort of promised to be make your painting life a lot easier with a single coat and sort of less or a more rush job. So instead of spending hours on a mini, they're like, hey, paint your entire army in hours. So yeah, it'll be good to have a look. So yeah, we'll just quickly have a look. So there's these two trays in this chest. The chest is quite nice. There's that bit of wood which is broken from somewhere. You can probably stay down there as long as it's not causing any issues. You can't see anywhere that's missing it. But yeah, so these come with a ball bearing in them, so you can shake them well. And we're going to have a look probably at just sort of how these paints work. I don't know how useful it is to have a quick overview of all these paints just as they are. But I'm also going to have a quick look at sort of the different primers and how they work with these paints. I've read online a few reviews of people saying, hey, these paints don't sort of work with my primers. So yeah, we've got this nice paint box. You can store everything in. And then it's got the full range of the instant colours. So yeah, we'll have a quick look at how everything works. I'm going to quickly go through and prime a bunch of stuff using the few different primers that I have. I've got some from other campaigns and some from just retail ones. But yeah, this is the exciting box. It's quite a nice box. I'm pretty happy with how everything arrived. So that's good. And then yeah, the range of colours is hopefully everything that's expected. But yeah, we'll have a closer look at them once we actually start trying to paint some stuff. Alright, we'll see you soon. Bye! Hey, so I went ahead and I found some of my old Zombicide, Invader minis that need to be painted. So I went and primed them with a bunch of different primers. So first up we have this RPE Paints and Minis, and then next to that we have some primer, just using some cheap gesso primer. Next to that we have primed using Style and Reds. So this was done with the airbrush. The first two were just brush on, and this has sort of a two-tone zenith shading. And then finally I did two different ones using the instant colours. I did one with the brush on, which was the Bone Charm as a base with some Holy Charm on top, and then the airbrushed version which used the Ice Charm as a base and then the Holy Charm on top, and this was also a zenith type shading. So now we're going to have a look and see how each of them react. So I'm going to just got a selection of instant colours that we're going to try out, and we'll give it a go, see how they all apply, how well it applies to the different types of primers. So I chose a few colours to do this. I haven't really looked too much into the colours, but I'm going to use this Corrupted Stamina as sort of the main colour of the body. I'm going to go for Salmon Fury as sort of the skin toned bits at the back of it. I've got this Wild Beast, which are going to be for the paws at the front, and then there's this Arcane Purple, which looks like a sort of the line down the middle of it. So I'm just going to give these a go. I'm not really expecting it to look terribly like the picture, just because I'm not used to these colours at all. But yeah, we'll have a look. So with with all of the Scale75 paints, the primers didn't know, but paints, these have a just a, I don't know if this will be visible at all, but in the top it's sealed, so nothing's going to leak out. So you just, before you use any of them, make sure you puncture that. So I've got just a wee nail here and a hammer. Just get through there. That didn't work. Let's try a second time. Might need a bit more force. I haven't actually opened one of these before. Maybe a screw would have been a better choice. But no, hammer and nail. Ooh. And I got a bit of purple on my hands. So yeah, we'll go through and we'll open open all of the different paints that we're going to use today. So we've got the purple open. Cool, so with each of them open, we'll get started. I think the first one I'm going to try out is these. So the first one I'm going to try out is using this RPE primer. I got this from a Kickstarter a while ago, where they had a set of paints that a range of paints that they were kickstarting, and they seem to be alright. The primer's a nice brush on one, so it was easy before I had my airbrush. So if we look at this, doesn't lose much detail. It might have needed a touch more because it still can see a wee bit of grey through there. But that's alright, it'll just be part of the effect. And that's what we're going to look at anyway. So if we put that there. Apologies in advance for some of these camera angles. I haven't done a painting video before, so I'm not sure. Make sure we shake our paint. Give it a good shake, and some ball bearings in here, and the paint's quite liquid, so it shouldn't need too much. I mean, it shouldn't. It should shake reasonably easily. So if we do that, we're also going to try out the paintbrushes that came along with this Kickstarter. So we're using the number 2 today. I'll give that a go to start with, at least. If it's too big, then we'll swap down a size, but I think it should be right for what we're trying to do. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so if we paint there, maybe need a bit more on the brush. So yeah, this primer at least, it doesn't bead like I've seen some reports. So we'll just go through. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, the idea behind the instant colours, or at least the Kickstarter idea behind it, was sort of to paint a bunch of these without having to worry too much about doing highlighting. It says something along the lines of paint knows where it wants to go, so just apply it. So that's sort of the technique I'm at least going to try with these. We'll have to see. We can already see sort of in these recesses and sort of darker paint, so it's going to dry a bit darker, so to do some self-shadowing. And then I've seen sort of reports of in highlights it'll end up just the white primer, which is why when I was priming it I stayed away from blacks, so I just used greys, and even some of the priming with the zenith highlighting I probably sprayed a lot more white than I normally do, just to keep it looking good. So yeah, this is applying at least to this quite nicely. It looks like it's doing what it should. It's pretty quick to get through all of it. We'll have a, yeah, once we've finished this one, we'll have a look at the next. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to do all of the green parts because I've got a bunch of green out, so I'll just do the green parts on the different minis first. It's also, I guess, hard to know how much to apply. But I think, yeah, that's the body. There should be a sort of a light green for the head. Maybe along the inside of this edge it can probably be green as well. We've got along there. So yeah, that's the green done for the RPE primer. We'll then move on to the gesso. So gesso is sort of, this is just a cheap brand of gesso primer. It's what I started off using because it was afraid to use sort of spray brushes. I still probably am a wee bit. Afraid to use the spray brushes. One of the problems I had with it though is it settles quite thick, so you can lose a lot of detail. So yeah, this is completely out of shot. I apologise. So as I was saying, I probably just had was applying this out of shot. So I will say what I said again because I probably cut it out. So yeah, with this, this is the gesso primer. It's not pooling as much, I think, because just how I use it. It could be because I use quite a cheap one, but I lose a lot of the finer details using gesso. It's what I started out with, and it's just, yeah, something I moved away from. But I was just interested in, for this video, is to see how it's actually going to work, and from what I can tell, it's doing a good job at least sticking to the paint. It doesn't darken in the shadows as much because it's sort of probably covered up the shadows with the primer, but where there's decent bits, it's looking fine. But yeah, so this is also quite quick to paint through. I think starting with the green, I guess the green's quite a dark colour, but for most of this paint job I'm going to be using quite a few of the darker colours as it is. It'll be one colour that I haven't quite got out yet, which is going to be that light green that I was going to use for the face. I thought I could just get away with the one green, but I think this may be a bit dark, or it may not be really the look that I'm going for. But yeah, so that's the gesso primed version. It stuck, it applied well, and I'm guessing there'll be other brands. I just have the cheapest one that I could find. Sort of when I started mini painting, I didn't want to spend too much on anything really. Even most of the acrylic paints I used were all just the same sort of cheap, just the same range of Reeves. So yeah, that's that one. Next up, we'll have a look at the Style and Res primer. So this is probably my go-to primer at the moment, because I can just run it through the airbrush and it comes out nice. I like the smoothness. Yeah, the texture through the airbrush is probably quite good, and it just sticks on. It's not too thick. But yeah, maybe that's a worry for these paints, but we'll have a look. Put this, yeah. So we'll quickly go through the green. So yeah, I guess the advantage is it is quite quick to go through and do all of the green, but the results, I guess, is what's the important thing at the end. But for me, this is probably looking like what I'd expect. I mean, my painting isn't really a high end. This is probably like this here, which I just recently finished from Valor and Villainy. Is probably about the standard. It's sort of the higher end of what I can do. What I probably can do is the right word. So I don't have sort of super high detail. So I'm just hoping these will help speed up things like these minions from Zombicide that I never got around to painting. Although I haven't painted anything from Zombicide, because you see the box full of everything, you're like, oh, too many. So this again, I don't see any issues with the primer that other people have mentioned for some brands of primers. It gets darker where it's meant to get darker and stays lighter. So this was one that I wasn't sure, sort of on the base. I did go a wee bit darker, so it's not the white that we've got for the other two primers. This is using a grey, but I did lighten the grey a bit, so we'll see how it fares. In saying it's not beading, I've got no idea what to expect. Like, there's the pools where it's supposed to pool, and the paint's probably sticking. I guess we'll have a look at the end product to see sort of what it's like and where it's dried. So this again was, oops, oh no, this again was quite quick. I want to clean that up before it dries though, just in case the red that's going to go there is affected by that green. So I just use a crappy brush with a bit of water, generally, we'll see if it works with this, to wipe away that. I assume it'll work, maybe it needs a bit more water. It sort of works. Oops. Maybe just have to be a bit quicker. Again, on there's a touch of green. But that's probably because I'm rushing a bit more than I generally do. Well, probably not actually. I'm usually quick. I don't like to spend too long most of the time. So yeah, that's the Style Reses green coat. So you can see sort of a couple of different layers. I think it's looking alright. So next up we've got the brushed on version of the instant primer. So this, it's not the nicest of, or the smoothest of primers, but I think that's because I'm used to the airbrush. Like, comparing it to sort of the gesso or the RPE, the primer's fine to brush on. It did take a couple of coats, but yeah, no, it was good. So this is, I'm at least guessing what the paint is supposed to act like with the primer from Scale75. And again, just quickly go through all of this. It's nothing in this that needs super fine detail, apart from that's really why I have to have my wee brush where I'm like, oh. Also, this brush that was supplied with the Kickstarter stuff, it's a very nice brush. I'm liking it. And probably, again, because I'm not sure, because I probably haven't really wanted to spend a lot, even though I spend a lot on paints, but probably brushes are something that I haven't yet started spending heaps on, but it's probably something that I should, because I'm finding this brush is so nice. It's also new, I guess the first time using it. I haven't gone through and ruined everything yet. I'm trying to make sure I keep good care of it. One thing I guess I worry about with these is I've seen people like, don't wash your brush because you'll wet the water down the instant paint too much. It's too thin as it is. So that's probably why I haven't really washed it, but I want to take care of it, so I probably should. And just make sure it's dry at the end. So yeah, this was the brushed on version of the Scale75 primers. So everything looks more or less the same. It's gone dark in the recesses and lighter outside. So finally we have the Scale75 primers that were put on using the airbrush rather than brushed on. This actually ended up probably a wee bit darker than the Style and Res. I think because I was more worried about making sure the colours were not too dark, the primers weren't too dark, I'd probably put more of I did probably a lot more white than I normally would with Style and Res, whereas with this one, I assumed that the darker colour would be fine. Again, this goes on pretty much the same as any of the other ones. For this, we probably I haven't picked any super light colours. So that might be an issue with reviewing it, but this is definitely probably, not definitely probably, that doesn't make sense, but this probably does feel like a lot nicer application. I don't know if it's just because I have painted 5 already, or 4 others already, that I'm just like, hey, I can go through this quickly, but looking at the back in there, it's a lot more of the darkness and lightness showing through. So I might, something to think about is I might, yeah, keep the darks a wee bit darker, not lighten them up as much. Because yeah, I don't, personally I probably won't go back to the gesso primer for anything. The RPE I did like, it's a nice brush on primer, and it goes quite chalky, so I thought it might be quite good with this. And yeah, but it was from a campaign, and I can't buy it locally, so I'm sort of like, oh, I don't want to use it all up, because then I won't be able to replace it, or won't be able to replace it easily. I think they're based over somewhere in the UK, and I'm based in New Zealand, or I live in New Zealand, so it's a wee bit of a hassle to try and get stuff, especially at the moment. I think these paints took about just over a month, I think, to arrive. But Christmas was in there, so that's probably a lot of the delay. So yeah, this is the green done for the Scale75 primer. I think all of them, I think all of them look pretty good. I don't have any real complaints. Yeah, wash, brush. Some of the things people have said is make sure you dry your brush quite well if after you wash it, so just, yeah, make sure it's not adding too much extra liquid. So the next up I'm going to do the backs of the critters, or the sort of spitty bit that's up the top. So I'm going to do that with the Salmon Fury. Again, we'll start with the RPE. This, I don't know, it's quite difficult to tell what colour. This is probably not the colour I was hoping for. I was hoping for a wee bit pinker, but I think this is quite red. We'll see how it looks when it dries. Yeah, it looks, this also goes on quite nicely. So this is a lot smaller for this. So yeah, that looks fine. And then I can just go on the edges. Make sure there's none of the white showing through. So yeah, that was fine. Next up, the gesso for its red bits. Like the base, like the green, this seems to be stick a lot more, and not have as much pooling, sort of in the deeper recesses. But I think overall it looks good. Just try and blend those wee bits a wee bit. Make sure I'm covering everything up. So yeah, this is the gesso. Next up we've got the Scale75. See how that goes. Again, yeah, doing this bit's quite a lot quicker. But yeah, as I say, I'm probably not the most detailed. I just like to sort of get things done most of the time, at least. Sometimes it's nice if you've got a bit bigger of a mini to put a bit more time, or at least some feel better. Like, yeah, I know what I'm going to do with that. Some I'm just like, nope, how can I make this done? So yeah, this is the Scale75. Looks like the red applies fine. Next up we have the brushed on version of the instant primer. I think if I do more painting videos, I'll try and work out a better setup. Because on the one hand, I want to look at what I'm doing. On the other, I want to look at and see what you can see. So I keep looking through and I'm like, why is it focused on my hand and not on the mini? It should be focused in the center of the screen. But, yeah. So yeah, this is the brushed on version of the instant color, or the Scale75 primer. Again, that's looking good, but I did notice that I added a wee bit of red on the green. So Christmas. So next up we have, well, finally we have the airbrush version of the Scale75 primer. I think this is probably the darkest out of the colours out of the other primers. It probably also, yeah, was probably the darkest where this is being painted, so that makes sense. And it also applies nicely. So yeah, this is the Scale75 airbrushed primer. It too looks perfectly fine. Next up we've got, we'll do the purple stripe along the back of the critters. Wash between each of the colours at least, even if that's the only time. It's quick enough to paint. And then, yeah, make sure everything's nice and dry. So if we go through and we use a bit of this purple, again we start with the RPE paints. Start with the RPE paints. So this is going to be this bit along the back. Oops, I've already made plenty of mistakes. You can see that. Oh no. Why did I choose to do this on camera? But yeah, this is fine. Everything's fine. We're all fine. Oops, I'm not fine. That goes down. But yeah, I just need to be a bit more careful because now I'm turning some of the red purple. Some of the green I don't mind if it gets a bit of purple on. But for the red, you probably want to try and keep that red. So yeah, that's the purple applied. It's looking fine. Next up we have the gesso primer. And it's probably being applied a wee bit thicker. And I made those mistakes earlier, getting a bit of green where it was supposed to be purple. But yeah, this is looking good. It's very easy to use. And it's yeah, doing some of the shading of dark. Of the dark where it needs to be. So this is purple using that gesso. Next up we have the style and res. So if we go along here, I'm putting a lot more of the paint on using this purple. I'm not sure why. It just feels like I need to. I need to work out the best way to hold. I don't keep messing up the red with additional purple. I'm trying to paint underneath here. So yeah, that's. Next up we have the brushed on version of Scale75. Go through and put that purple in. I feel like I should have used my this brush holder. Usually when I prime I just do it on cheap pill bottles because I don't care too much. But while I'm painting I generally use that. But I forgot to transfer them over. So that might have made this a wee bit easier just because it's a wee bit of a better grip. But that's fine. This is supposed to be easy. One coat, no worries, no skills required. That's what they say. I think there's some things I might do. It's just a second coat of the green underneath where it's supposed to shadow. Might try and find a darker green. But yeah, I'm not too sure. And finally we have the airbrush version of the Scale75 primer. I think the end results of these are going to be, or at least the near to end results, I'm going to post on our Instagram, Board Games and Cats. So be sure to check out the Board Games and Cats Instagram, and I'll post a few painted things on there. So yeah, if you're interested, keep an eye on it. I'll probably do some more Scale75 things. Sorry, some more things with the instant colours on there as well after this. So that's the purple done now. My battery on my camera is flat, so I'm going to cut away for a wee bit and go charge it. And then it'll give a chance for what's done already to dry. So it might come back and things might look as wet as they do at the moment. But yeah. Alright, so I went and found acid green sin. So I'll use that for the head. Quickly go through it and we'll put some of that on. Again, starting with the RPE paints. So this is just going to be a small light green up here. Alright, so this is a much lighter colour. While I guess that's what I was hoping for. It makes it a bit different. So this is that lighter green. We'll then move on to the gesso. Comes out alright. Onto the styles and res. And all of these I seem to have got purple on the very top of the head. And with these paints it's not really possible to hide it, just because they're so thin. But here's the styles and res. Next up we have the brushed on version of the Scale75 primers. These ones do feel like it's at least a bit thicker, but I don't know. So I have that there. And then finally the airbrush versions of the Scale75. That's there. So yeah, this is definitely thinner, which is probably what was expected with the lighter colour. You see a lot more of the primer colour below. It still overall seems not terrible. Next up, I'm going to quickly go through and do a bit more of the purple. So we'll do the tonguey tentacle things in purple. So using that same arcane purple. I'll just do this quick. So these seem from the picture to be quite dark. I missed them completely until I was painting it and had to steer a wee bit closer. So I think that's one of the problems, I guess, with these paints, is they can't actually make everything that super dark colour. Like this tongue, even though I put a bunch on it, it's still got like white highlights. And then I'm guessing that's going to be the same throughout all of these. Maybe the gesso, because it just holds everything a wee bit nicer. We'll get away with being able to make it dark. But no, even there, you can still sort of see a bit of difference. It's like a darker bit and a lighter bit. So I guess really left to deal with that. Even though it was better to deal with that, it's probably going to take a few coats, not the easy single coat that was talked about in the campaign. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just probably not exactly what I or a few of the other people who bought this range were expecting. Oops, sorry about that. And then with the Scale75 paints, again, this is going to need a couple of coats to really get the sort of box art look for this. But for now, I'm just gonna go with the single coat. We'll see what it needs afterwards. Alright, and finally, I'm going to do the legs, and they're just going to be done using that brown. So they're going to have the wild beast sin. Yeah, I wasn't really sure what colour to go with for these. But I thought it looked a wee bit browny. But again, I guess it was probably a bit darker than what we're going to get. So I think when using these scale colours, it might be a good idea to do a swatch first. And something my wife was like, "You're going to do some swatches where you can just sort of work out what the colours are going to make on the different primers, and then you can sort of can have your reference sheet to be like, I want to do that, because if you look at the bottle, sort of that's the colour on the bottle, And then if you look at the colour on the legs as I'm painting, it's quite a bit lighter. So yeah, it's just nice to know where that's going to go. So yeah, I might come again with this and just try and darken everything up, but maybe not. We'll see. Once it's done, we'll see how it's all looking. And you've got to really load up your brush with some paints for some of these. And then yeah, there is bits when I'm doing this brown where it's just not, I don't think it's not sticking, I think it's just doing what it's supposed to, but it's not going dark enough. So it might just need a big case of having a few layers, or maybe doing the pre-shading a wee bit more, and priming. Want to, yeah, not sure. Colour in there. I don't think it's probably the most amazing paint job, and I'm guessing there's probably still a lot to learn about how they work. I mean, I've got a lot to learn about how just normal paints work, really. So yeah, it's all just some time and understanding, maybe some acknowledgement of what the different colours are good for, sort of. Yeah. So yeah, this is on the RPE primer. So that's its brown legs. I'm sort of not sure about these. It's got quite splotchy rather than a nice consistent finish. That's probably just on the way I'm doing it, because I probably loaded up my brush a bit more because it was just so light. Yeah, I think I'll have to have another look at the brown. So let's move on to the gesso. Whereas this one, it does. It holds the colour a bit better, I think. So it doesn't probably do the pores and highlights as much, but it means that it holds the colours, and yeah. So I guess it treats it more as a normal paint. Unless there are sort of bigger rooms that need to be, well, not bigger details, more standy-arty. I think those would probably show up well on this. You can see a wee bit, or I can see a wee bit. Hopefully you can on the camera. But yeah, this is definitely a quick job. I think I might just prime up another one of these critters, and then I might, not on the video, but on our Facebook or on our Instagram or something, we'll go through and just probably have a version that's painted sort of the more classic way. I mean, these are quite small, so I don't know how much more I will actually do. But yeah, I think it would be interesting to see sort of how they could look different with the different painting style. But yeah, that's the brown legs using the gesso. Just a wee bit done. paint in there. So yeah, this is the style and res. I think this probably, I think it's just the nicer finish that you get from the airbrush, but this does feel a wee bit better to paint on as well, but it's still getting random splotches where it's highlighting or it's darkening things that are different, and there's no real bumps or anything, it's just splotchy. Well, I don't think splotchy is the right word, it's something. So yeah. But feels a wee bit cleaner than that first one in the RPE. I think maybe watch more. Probably should have watched before this some of the painting things, but they were the most common ones that they had on there that have been released were the ones done by Scale75, and they, I don't know, I feel like they know how their paints work, so they can probably do a lot of these things better. They're like, this is how it's supposed to do, so they can make a painting video and be like, yes, this is perfect. Look at how these are used. Whereas for the rest of us, we, I guess, go through a phase of how do we use these? What are they? But yeah, so this is the style and res. It's, yeah, the same as the other ones. It's got a wee bit of pooling of things just along the flat surface, and then we go to the Scale75 primer that was brushed on. And I think, yeah, it's just acting the same as everything else that I've tried. So I think, at least from my experience, any of these primers that we've had a look at are probably fine. I don't recommend the gesso, but that's mostly because probably I don't know how to use it without losing a bunch of detail, and it might just be using a cheap one. It was nice to start with, because I guess when you're starting your mini painting you don't know how committed you'll really be, so you don't want to go out and have an initial outlay. But in saying that, you probably don't want to start with these paints either. I guess they're easy, you just colour in. You've just got to, yeah, it's like a colouring in book. You're just applying different colours to the different parts of the mini. Although that's how I treat any mini painting. It's probably like they're not great. I'm just like, hey, this bit needs to be green, this needs to be brown. And I guess that's what these paints are designed to help those people who are like, yeah, this needs to be green, this needs to be brown. So we've got those brown legs, using the Scale75 primers that are just brushed on. So we've got pretty much the same sort of thing. And then finally we've got the Scale75 primer that's gone on using the airbrush. So I can get this over. And again, yeah, this is, so I think the lightness in this is just the brown rather than acting badly with any of the primers in particular. I think even here it's probably on the grey. Grey parts it's probably the worst we're seeing out of everything. So that might just be trying to use these lighter colours on very dark. It's not even very dark. On the darker primer that they sell, the ice charm. I think I didn't see this as much on. Oops. Didn't see this as much on the or with the darker paints. So it could just be. I think I've read some people have just had issues with some of the paints not being pigmented enough. They did also supply a thing to reduce the pigment even further. So that's probably interesting. I think I'd want to do the opposite. Maybe have these a bit thicker, so then, yeah, have something to thicken it. I don't know. I'm not sure how these actually work. I think they're just quite a wet, glazy type thing. Or probably more of a wash than a glaze. I've got a book. Not that I've read it. I've skimmed it. I might just do add a little bit more paint and try and go over this again. See. It just doesn't seem to have really picked up the colour as much as any of the others, which is, I think, weird, because this is with the Scale75 paint. It is, yeah, as I said, it's probably where the primer was the darkest on these legs, and that's with the lighter paint. And the other primers all have light colours as their bases. The Style and Res, I think the legs probably were a bit whiter than, a bit lighter than what I'd normally do. But yeah, it's weird. It's just doesn't wanna colour. Although it's magic, instant colours with magicians and things, so maybe this is the colour it wants to be. So yeah, that should be the legs done. It's a colour. So maybe it'll just need a couple of coats for those feet down there. But with that is pretty much everything on the model, I guess, painted with a single coat to test out how it reacts. Just quickly go through and tidy up a few bits. I'll just let these dry and we'll come back and have a look at how they look once everything's dry. So there we have it after leaving them to dry overnight. Look pretty good. So they're all looking pretty similar. So we'll have a look at the final results. This is the one using the RPE paints. So yeah, they're quite, it looks pretty good. It's nice. It was quick. A quick process. And yeah, you can see sort of darkness in some spots and lighter in the other. But overall, the paints work fine. And then with the cheap gesso, the same sort of result. It looks like it's got a wee bit more depth in the colour compared to compared to the first primers, but I don't think it's much wrong with that. It just doesn't have as much of the contrasty. Next up we have the one done with the Starlin res. Again, this has, because of the airbrush being used to prime it, it's got a much smoother thing, smoother coat, and it's got more of the sort of lights and darks on the tail there, but it also has, it looks, the darkness on sort of trying to get a nice solid body of green you don't really get, so it might need a couple more coats to do that. And then with the two instant colours, we'll start with the brushed on with the bone charm. Again, things are looking quite bright or quite light, but it's all done what it needs to do, and it makes bits pop out and bits brighter and darker. Again, the tail on this one sort of shows a wee bit, and then finally using the ice charm as the undercoat, and then using the airbrush. This is probably my favourite out of them, and it might just be because I keep the dark as dark, but yeah, it's all looking pretty good. So I don't really have any problems with any of these, but I thought I would go through and have a look and sort of compare what it would be like with the classic way of painting, using just the regular, more thick versions of the acrylic paints. So sort of, this was, it's not right, so if we zoom out, so this is sort of the very basic type thing where I just chose a few colours. I went with some Army Painter range of these colours. So we've got Angel Green for the body, Scaly Hide for the head, Leather Brown, Alien Purple, and Scar Tissue. So with these, just doing the same sort of process where I took, just did the body, the tail, the bit around the back and the tongue, the head and the legs, all different colours. It's sort of about the same amount of time to paint, but you don't have any of the contrast. You've got a lot more depth in the colours, but you don't have as much of the sort of pop of features. So then I did sort of the next thing, which adds maybe about another 10 minutes, or probably less than that, but going through adding a wash and and then a dry brush to sort of bring out some of those features, so you can sort of see lighter and darker. If my light was better. So you can sort of see the lighter and the darker bits. So this does have a bit more of that pop, but again, it adds a bit more time, maybe about 10 more minutes even, just for these wee small minis. And then there's the final sort of type where you go through and try and paint on your highlights and paint on your darker colours. Just do a lot more time painting to try and have it like it should look based on light. This one I also added an extra green, so I was using an extra green along there. I think it was the army green, but it doesn't add much. It means you can sort of blend it in a wee bit of white to make sort of the brights a bit brighter, but it's something that I probably need more skill at really to make it work. But I think the sort of each of the other one minis are probably the ones using the instant colours took about 15 minutes each, and then the ones using the straight colour was about 15 minutes as well. Using the wash it was probably about maybe 20 to 25 minutes, and then sort of trying to do everything by hand was just, I think it ended up at about an hour and 10 minutes. And yeah, so I think for what the instant colours are trying to do, they do speed up the paint. I think there's a bit of learning to try and work out what colours need to be used, but that's all with any brand. I think it's a wee bit harder to sort of tell just from looking at the bottle, so there will be a bit of experiment. But yeah, these are our range of painted up minis using the instant colours and sort of some classic ones. So if you want to check out more of the painting, I'm not sure, we don't really post too often, but check out our Instagram, Board Games and Cats, and we post a few painting pictures there. Otherwise, be sure to check out more of our videos, more from the Board Games and Cats. Thanks. Bye.